All right, everyone. Welcome to the Helm Developer Call of September 10th, 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's start right away with announcements. In the document, I don't believe we have any. Let me check. No, we got nothing there. Anybody wants to add something to the announcements? No? All right, so let's dive into discussion. First topic, delisting the stable incubator from Helm Hub. So we had agreed we would put this on the agenda until everything was settled. So I don't know if there's any follow-up, Farina?
Sure. So we are currently in discussions on how do we make these charts still accessible after the fact. There's currently two working thoughts on this. One is Chart Center by JFrog currently has the entire stable and incubator repository in it. You can go there now and see it and use it today. And they say that it'll be around after the stable and incubator chart repositories are gone. They will continue to host that for as long as they seem necessary. They haven't said it'll be going away. They don't know if or when that would happen. And so one option is to point people to Chart Center and JFrog for this. The other is then to host something ourselves. And I did some rough estimates. Even though we have a ton of charts and chart version, charts are itty bitty in size. And so it's about 900 megs is the whole stable and incubator repositories. That's it. It's huge when you go to versions, but you got a bunch of stuff that are between like 5 and 40K. They're pretty small. And so we could host that because it's less than a gig and say S3, and then it would be a bandwidth thing. And that's hard to gauge because I don't have bandwidth numbers. I don't have that data accessible to me in GCR. If you figure it's going to be like a terabyte a month, you're talking somewhere around $100 a month. And that may be something we may be able to get the CNCF to pay for. But my first thought of it is to use something like JFrog Chart Center as the go-to if everybody's, including JFrog's open to that.
Does this mean new URLs for the repos then?
We have to have new URLs in every way, shape, and form. It currently points directly to the bucket in Google's cloud. And there is no nice way to move that to another place without us paying a bunch of money.
So like a chart center URL or a helm.sh URL?
Doesn't matter, any URL change, because it's hard coded to Google's storage bucket. Means you can't move storage buckets from one project to another. You've got to do some weird stuff when you're going to move things. And this is currently a Google corporate account rather than a consumer account in Google Cloud. So there might be some differences there, but it's kind of a pain point. So in general, we plan on this just going away and the URL no longer being accessible as of November 13th. They may do something after November 13th, but on November 13th and anytime after, it may just be garbage collected and go away. Yeah. So we're looking for an alternative place to document, to tell people they can use.
Has there been any kind of opinions from the rest of the chart maintainers themselves, like yourself, Scott, or Paul, or anyone else who's on the charts maintainer team, on what kind of opinions they prefer on this?
We haven't had an in-depth discussion. It's on my to-do list. We've kind of asked more, what could we do? And that's what actually led me to come up with an S3 estimate, because the CNCF has certain S3 credits. Because there are other hosts like things like Wasabi and things like that that are S3 compatible. But the question is do we go with something like Chart Center, or do we have the CNCF go and figure something out? And so I'm open to all opinions on this and to continue to have discussions over the course of the next week before we pull the trigger on anything. But yeah, this is something we do need to talk about more there.
I like the idea of using helm.sh URL, and we can CNAME to JFrog stuff. And if they decide they don't want to support it then down the line, then we could.
Well, the charts repository is going away. They will no longer be getting new versions of things in Stable and Incubator. It is just an archive of old things. We are moving to the distributed model. So it's not like new Stable and Incubator chart versions will be coming out. They won't be. This is just an archive. We're moving everybody to a distributed model and having them available through first the Helm Hub, then the Archive Hub as we migrate over to the Artifact Hub as we move to the Artifact Hub. So it's not there to continue to get new things in there. The charts repo, the Stable and Incubator are being deprecated and going away.
You're saying don't have an official place because it's not being encouraged to.
It's not encouraged. It's really unmaintainable. We went through charts maintainer burnout. So instead of being able to work on tooling to help people run their own repositories, we spent lots of time reviewing things and dealing with problems there. And we ended up with tons of maintainers of the charts repo just getting burned out doing a lot of this work. So we needed a distributed model that could do more, which ended up leading us to the Helm Hub. And charts were always designed to be distributed. Everybody said, ooh, Helm's got one. We're going to make this a central repo. And that became a real pain point in management and maintenance. So the way we had it just didn't work. And quite frankly, it makes people a lot happier if they can host their own. Like if JFrog can host their own Artifactory there and make it accessible to the Helm client, they'd much rather do that than try to work with maintainers upstream to get all the changes in our way of doing things.
There's one concern that as a consumer that I have is that the Helm the stable central repo kind of gave us a guarantee that it would stay there until this is happening. But if I'm pointing to a chart that's become popular, a new product, whatever, it could technically go away anytime. I get no guarantee from the provider that they're going to keep up that, that repo out there.
I mean, that's to be an argument with any kind of product, really. That really depends on the company who is interested in investing in the project or in the product. If, for example, there's some other vendor out there that is not investing in a chart or something like that, then either their customers are not interested or they're just not investing the time into that one. So I think it's a hard disconnect between like what's in the Stable and Incubator repository versus like what is considered going to be stable for the foreseeable future. I guess it depends on who is willing to foot the bill and who's willing to make a profit off that. Oh, Farina, you're muted again.
Can you hear me? Okay, my headset just died. So you bring up an interesting problem because there's a big cost to hosting all of these ourselves, right? And Google has kindly hosted that for us, which has just been fantastic. But that's going away. There's actually an issue in the community repository about handing it off to somebody else. And the fact that we were deprecating it is the reason we don't have to continue on, and they're not having us transfer it right away. They let us go through the end of our deprecation cycle because Google is footing this bill themselves rather than the CNCF. And it has grown over time for us to do this. And so if we did provide that, we're now going to have a place, and we have to find financiers and foot the bill and look to the CNCF on a non-trivial cost to keep this as an active thing. And if somebody wants to pursue that through the Helm board, we can start talking about it. But that is a complication. Now, the folks over on Chart Center, when they do this stuff, they do keep it around even after stuff goes away because they keep a copy of it. I think we said it's an immutable copy. So that is an option for people who want something that'll be around long term, and that's one of their business selling points.
Yeah, I wasn't really suggesting that we necessarily do it. It was just, I think we have to have a story for our users. So we're discussing having our own kind of cache or central, copy local, which makes it safer. Because there's also issues of maybe removing versions. Maybe there was a proper process used because it was managed by you guys, and now suddenly another company says, okay, I'm publishing this chart and I'm going to just keep the latest version around, or I decide to clean up, or, all this stuff kind of comes up as a user. So I'm just more bringing it up to make people aware of that perspective because we might get questions. And
that's a really good point. In fact, I haven't looked at the state of the Helm caching in a while, and I'll pull something down. But that is something we should probably poke at and document more clearly so that folks know some of the stuff. And if people want to have backups, the kinds of commands they can use, just fetch it to store it locally, use that. There's some things like that that we can do to document stuff.
So maybe something like best practices for charts or something as we move to this new model, new distributed model.
A really good idea.
All right. Anything else for this topic? Okay, so next one is from me. It's HIP number 2, which is what we had started discussing before, which was having fixed dates. I'm glad Dr. Butcher is reacting positively, having fixed release dates, at least for minor releases. So I tried to put the basic ideas in a HIP.
Oh, did we lose Mark?
He seems to be stuttering a little bit here. So I guess until he comes back and is moving, he put everything into, now that we have HIPs in place, the Helm enhancement proposals. He created an enhancement proposal for fixed release dates for minor versions of the Helm client.
So I have read the proposal, and there were a couple things I was hoping to get a little bit of clarity on. So when Mark is back, okay, there's Mark. So the two things I wanted to the two things I wanted to ask about were one, do we want to recommend in this proposal that security releases are always released as patch releases instead of as minor releases? We could probably skip it in this proposal and be totally fine because that is sort of a second issue. The second one I wanted to ask about was if we want to commit ourselves to releasing at a particular time related to the Kubernetes releases. So they release for a quarter. Do we want to say we'll release after a Kubernetes release, or 1 month after a Kubernetes release, or do we want to just leave the proposal as is and work that out sort of ad hoc?
The proposal does mention syncing with the Kubernetes releases, no fixed date. Mentions that Helm says that there's no guarantee that Helm will work with a Kubernetes, a new Kubernetes release. So we should technically release our Helm right after, or like you said, a month after or a week after, whatever, but after.
Yeah, because I don't know if we want to commit to something more or just go with, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I somehow missed that one or it didn't register.
We generally did that. We could never set to a fixed date afterwards because trying to upgrade client Go, there's always such an unknown. It could be a week, it could be a month. We don't know, and that was one of our hard points when we was dealing with that. I don't know if it's any better now. Adam has often done that work, but that was one of the points that held us from being able to hold any kind of fixed date. But I do like generally syncing up to Kubernetes releases and doing one shortly thereafter. It'll also make it predictable for people. Even if most folks don't touch a new Kubernetes release, there are a lot of people using 13, 14, 15, all of them not supported still anymore. So we know people don't upgrade right away, so we're not under the gun, but I do like that cycle. And I also like the comment of security releases always being patch releases, because a minor release is going to bring a whole bunch of other features along. If you haven't tested and vetted that, you just want a security release. You really just want a patch release for the security release and not the minor release. I think security releases should always be patch releases.
I think
you're dropping in and out. I think it sounds like you're in a tunnel. Did your mic just swap to a different mic?
For what it's worth, though, I think I kind of agree with that point, Farina, and with Mark, Butcher, with what you were raising about that. Because we've had disconnects in the past before where we've cut a security release, or we've done like a couple of security patches here and there, and then we've cut a minor release because, well, we've hit enough features in the newest release of Helm that it kind of warrants a new minor release. But then we get this disconnect from the community saying, well, I do want to take advantage of this new like security patch or these security patches that are in there. but I don't want to do a migration to the next minor release because of X, Y, and Z. I think we've done a better job than other projects in terms of maintaining semver compatibility and backwards compatibility when it comes to a new minor release. But at the same time, there's still that risk of when you introduce new features into a project, there is some amount of risk and there's some amount of I need to go back and see if any of this impacts me as a user. So I kind of am leaning towards if we are doing security patch releases, then even if it is close to a minor release, it might be worth warranting just saying it should be a patch release, at least for the very first one, before we go and cut the new minor. So then we have a patch and a minor. So
we tried cutting it as a minor release once, just once, because we thought, hey, we're in release candidate phase for a new minor release, and we got backlash from it for not doing it as a patch release. We did, and so we ended up cutting another patch release as well for the people who needed that. And for me, that was a big wake up call to say, hey, you know what? We should do it, just because you want the security release without changing things. And occasionally a Helm minor version brings some changes in you didn't want or you weren't ready for, or you don't really want to think about processing through the features if you're really paying attention to your pipeline. I know some people are just like, install the latest, do whatever. But there's some people out there who really pay attention to differences, and that doesn't work for them.
So that point I think is great. So I'll add it to the HIP or something like that. I'm not too sure what's the next steps to do. We work on the HIP together, or as on a PR review?
So when I was kind of reading the Python enhancement proposal process and the KEP process, basically how they go about with improving or moving towards a proposal as final is that they come out with an initial proposal and they say, well, here's a reference implementation, or they say, well, here's where we need to mark ourselves as successful in this proposal. And so we'll go with the assumption that this proposal moves forward as it is, its current draft. And if we need to amend it, we'll go and amend it based on learnings and things like that. And when we come back and say, I think we've amended this process enough to say that we can mark this as final, we'll go through a final review and make sure that everything is okay. And then have we succeeded in the criteria that we originally set out? Or do we need to revisit the proposal? Or do we need to come up with competing solutions to say that this proposal doesn't work and we need to come up with something else? So to answer your question, I think what it is that maybe we should go back and amend some of these things that were the discussion points brought here. And then we can go ahead and merge that as a proposal and move forward and build consensus based on the next new couple of releases, and see as we kind of get this more release cadence, we can add more addendum to the documentation, or we can add more information, or if we need to go and amend certain things, we can go and amend them. But I think the proposal is written well out enough that we have enough material to go forward and say, this is kind of like the documented process, and we can move forward from there. Does that answer your question?
It's just that unlike a technical proposal where you have a reference implementation, you can kind of put it out there, you see how it is. This is, we're going to start publishing to our users. This is our dates. And so we kind of have to get an agreement that everybody we're comfortable with enough before we start, going live, let's say, with it.
Yeah, and so in HIP 1, there's like a proposal or like an approval process, which is kind of like to build the consensus with the core maintainers. And so if I'm assuming like there's more than enough core maintainers on the call here, whether to say that this is okay or not. So it would be, I guess, coming back to the proposal and asking project maintainers like myself, Butcher, Farina, anyone else, and also org maintainers, which also happens to be myself, Butcher, and Farina, to go and actually approve if the proposal matches the specification of the HIP. That's fine. That's all like the org maintainers need to weigh on. But it's more important that other Helm core maintainers kind of come back and say, yes, this looks great, and we can move forward with this process. And Josh, and I'd also get Martin or anyone else who's interested in this proposal to take a look at it if you want.
Okay, great. So So everybody now is aware of the existence of the proposal. If you want to put comments in the PR, that's great too. Then we can kind of get to a point. Then. I guess enough about that. We only have 6 minutes left. Moving on to the security audit, Dr. Butcher.
Okay, so we are we're still in the last phases of our second security audit. So CNCF is, as a reminder, has gone to an every other year security audit process for anything that's graduated. And so as our first year as a graduated project, we're doing another security audit. This one's been very thorough. The outcome of this audit is going to be 2 reports. One of them is a high-level architectural sort of thing. The second one is a code audit. The code audit report was finished before the high-level audit report, so I have now seen that, as have a few other people. From here, okay, so there's a process question I'm not sure about. How do we want to handle disclosing this report? And do we disclose it to the security maintainers first and then disclose it at a later time publicly? So we need to figure that out. I am strongly in favor of disclosing it publicly, which is why I'm talking about it on a public call. But we, of course, want to make sure that we handle anything we need to handle before disclosing it, just like we would a normal bug report. Do we want to disclose it to the security maintainers? Do we want to keep a smaller subset of security maintainers to do it? I'm just kind of at a loss for knowing what to do at this point, other than, you know, fixing the bugs, which is a process well underway already.
Yeah. So my first suggestion would probably be to disclose it to all the security maintainers, just because you and I are the people who've worked on this so far. And if we both go win the lottery and run off to the hills somewhere, then we should at least have that out there for everybody. And once we've got enough things handled, which isn't much more at this point, then we go public with it at the earliest possible convenience. For those who are listening or those who are here, the reason it hasn't moved forward even more quickly is because both Matt and I have either been very busy and nothing in it was major enough to say, we got to run to get something done right away and out, which was really nice to see.
Yeah, so who else is on the security maintainers team aside from the 3 of us? Is Josh, are you part of that as well?
No, I'm happy to
part of it, isn't it?
take that up. But
The current security maintainers team is, let's see, I haven't looked at this in a while. We probably need to rework it. Adam,
It and Nan, I think, too.
Adnan, the 3 Matts, Nikhil, and Vic. And so this is probably something where we need to revisit the security maintainers list, because this is for everything under the Helm org. And so I'll say, if you are interested in being on it, it is documented at this link here I just shared with everyone on the call. You have to be a project maintainer of some sort to be on it. Reach out to, I'll take it. You can reach out to me and we can start talking about it, and we can talk about revising this list.
So I added another agenda item that was talking about what some of the governance issues. Can we just make the security list one of the governance things and talk about it next week, and maybe do several governance things, because there are a number of sticky issues that are emerging right now that we should figure out as a group how to solve.
I like that.
All right, so we'll move the last item of governance to next week. There is one item from Farina, but before that, can we pick moderator notes and triage for next week?
I think Bridget volunteered for notes already.
With a disclaimer, but
Yeah, with a disclaimer.
I can do moderator again if it's the one I can do, so I'm available. Anybody for notes?
No, I think if Bridget is happy doing that, then we'll assign Bridget for that one.
All right, okay, triage.
I can help, but I can't do it myself because, again, I will have several days where I am busy in the next week and I may not be able to triage.
I'm going to be here full time. I'm working on another project right now, but I'm imagining that with me doing some of the security audit reviews over the next coming like days, I'll probably be taking a look at the issue triage as well. So I'll be able to help out with some of the PRs too.
I can also help in a little capacity.
Great, thanks everybody. Last item is storing tiller after GCR.
So this is my item, but I have a hard stop here in a minute. I'll just do the gist. Tiller is now in Docker Hub. It's up in Quay, and I'm looking at putting it into Google Container Registry, the new one, because there was the old container registry. Now there's the new container registry that Google has. I've already actually got it in the old one, and then I realized all the limitations and that it's kind of deprecated. And then there's the new one that they just announced. And so I'm looking at sticking it in there and maybe making that the default location after we have to pull it out of GCR for Helm 217. I'm double checking with the GitHub folks that they're cool with us doing that, because it may get some downloads before we do anything. But I wanted to talk about that, but I actually have to bolt. So if you all want to continue that conversation, go ahead. If not, I can wait a week. All right, there you go.
All right, thanks. So I don't know, do you guys want to talk about it, or do we, it's 1 o'clock. Technically we should stop.
The main thing that I'm worried about is that people will have tiller go to restart and that they'll have failures of tiller in production because it's moved. And so where it's stored in the future is kind of a sideline question, I guess, to that. But however it is that we get the word out and make sure people understand and make sure people take care of it before it goes away. Because it would be, you know, you don't want to have a bunch of people yelling on Twitter about like how they can't update production because the stupid effing Helm team effed them up and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, we told you 75 times that we were going to move it. So I don't know, anything we can do to mitigate that is important probably.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we can definitely do some improvements in like Helm init and whatnot to kind of make that more clear and whatnot. Because I think what the goal with Farina's idea there was to go, when you change over to the new tiller image, if you do a Helm init -- upgrade, that will immediately switch you over to the new image and you'll be able to migrate quite cleanly. It's just a new location to pull that image from. Because we no longer will be able to host it there. So as long as we can make a very clear indication to users that when we release a new version of Helm 2, like Helm 217 or something, make it very clear in the very front of the release note saying, use Helm Tiller upgrade or Helm init upgrade to switch over to the new location, because it's no longer going to be present.
Is it something maybe we could get into the CNCF newsletter? So I think they do a newsletter, right? Maybe we could get a mention in there that's like, hey, important, if you're a Helm 2 user, make sure you upgrade your tiller location or upgrade to Helm 3, you pick.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I can reach out to them if it's useful.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
What's the date that we're targeting for deprecation of that image or that location?
1 year after Helm 2 or after Helm 3's release, which was in November. I don't know what was the exact date in November, but I think it was like November
2021.
2020. November 13th. I'm looking at the notes before, November 13th, 2020.
And is the new version of the Helm init out so that it automatically will switch the image?
Not yet, no.
We just have to solve the problem Matt brought up today, which is which one we're going to point it to, which alternative registry, and then I think we can probably merge it.
Yeah.
So we should probably do a coordinated announcement via the newsletter and whatever else we can as soon as we get that merged.
Okay, so we target like early October.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay, so I'll check with the CNCF on when the newsletter is going out, and then see if we can get it like just penciled in to happen there.
Thank you. Anything else? 5 minutes past the deadline. All right, just to mention, if people that were joining the call had topics, maybe next time put them on the chat and we'll try to fit them in. Feel bad if somebody was hoping to have extra time. Thanks everybody, and have a good week. See you next Thursday.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.